Hi there. So yeah, I just wanted to show you guys real quick how to set up multi-passes in Cinema 4D. So yeah, let's go over them. What I did here is there's a bunch of cubes, some other objects. This cube has a fully reflective material. Boom, GGX it's called. And this sphere over here has a glass material, just a standard one. And this cube over here has a bit of luminance, and we can bump it up a little bit. You can see it getting lighter there. And this cube is just plain material, only in the color channel something. I can even turn this off. So yeah, nothing too special. But what we did here is we added a render tag compositing, and we checked this. I'll show you why later. And then there's a pyramid that's flying through the sky, and that too will make sense later. To finish this off, we have a light that's casting shadows on the floor. And basically what you have to do is you have to go to the shadow tab and say, instead of none, I want a soft shadow. And you can put the intensity, or the density I should say, up and down, like so. Floor to catch those shadows, and a camera. And what's interesting in the camera is that you can get some depth information from that as well. So in the details tab, let me go to the top view first. So here you have your camera, but when you check this button, rear blur, you get a second handle that you can adjust. So the first handle is where your depth pass should start, and this is where your depth pass ends. So what it does, it will give you a gradient from black to white, and yeah, I'll show you what you can do with it later. Right, so what happens when we render this out? Yeah, usually you see this window, it's calculating. Yeah, a lot going on, beautiful render. I put the quality down a bit so that it goes quicker. As you can see, the reflections work quite well. You even see this cube in there. This is a bit lighter because it's luminant. And yeah, what you can do is, if you go into layer, instead of seeing the whole image, you can say, hey, I just want to see my single pass. And yeah, if you set your save to a certain location, then it will render out all of these passes separately, and that just does it automatically for you. So yeah, this is how your renders will look. Your reflections, what you expect, you can see the objects in there. It can be handy to yeah, make the reflections even a bit more noticeable in your scene. If you want that in After Effects, you can do that with this pass. It's not that used that often. This one, on the other hand, is used all the fucking time. It's called AO, and basically what it does, it's yeah, giving you a black and white gradient where there's contact with another object. So intersections almost, contact shadow. Yeah, and then this one is also really interesting. It's the GI. It's not looking that great because the settings are quite low, but because we have this luminant material, basically what it does, it emits light, and this is just the light that's emitted from it. And also because we have light bouncing on this triangle and this one, it's yeah, it's bouncing the light basically in the scene. And you want that sometimes as a separate pass to just have a bit more control over it. Or you can just render it into your scene. Same goes for AO basically. You can say, hey, apply it to the project or not, because sometimes you want it separate and then you don't want to apply it, so that only in compositing you can apply it. Let's move on. The shadow pass, yeah, what you expect. You can multiply this in After Effects, and will give you some nice results, or overlay, depending on what you want to do. And then this one is quite interesting. It's called the motion vector, and it only works in After Effects in combination with a plugin called real smart motion blur. And what it does, it basically, the greener your object, the faster it travels. And you put some artificial motion blur on it. And the reason we do this is if you want motion blur in your scene, you have to go here and you have to say, okay, I want the same frame rendered 16 times so you can blur in between, blah, 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 blah. But that's really heavy and it takes a lot of time to render. So that's why we use the motion factor sometimes. It's just quicker. It's not as nice, but hey, it does the job. Then there's the alpha multipass. Yeah, what you expect. So this is transparent. Transparency is even reflected. But yeah, if you have this button checked in your render settings, then it will be transparent in your beauty render as well. Just can be nice to have some more control in compositing. Then the depth pass, my favorite. So like I explained before, at the front of the camera it's black, at the end of the camera it's white. And you can select which part in this render you want sharp. So in After Effects you will use a plugin called Frischluft, or maybe just the plain old camera lens blur, and you select this layer as your input, and then you can say, alright, I want this sharp or that sharp or this. It's quite nice. And yeah. Lastly, we have the object buffer that we assigned to this cube. And it just gives you a black and white render to exclude that cube and maybe change the color a bit in After Effects, or I don't know, yeah, just exclude it so that you can composite it in different ways. It's very handy. And that one is also seen in your reflections. So be careful with that. Yeah, that's it. And then go ahead and composite these, see what you can do with it. Good luck. Bye-bye. Hi. Yeah, quick little side note that my colleague Guido is pointing out at the moment. It's quite important actually, because what we will need to do is to also get a diffuse pass. Basically, what that does is it will give you a render that has nothing on there, so no reflections, no shadows, no nothing. So then once you start adding these multipasses in After Effects, you're not putting them on each other like duplications. So that's why you need a diffuse pass as a base. So yeah, that's quite important. And also, once you start rendering your depth pass or other passes, you might want to change this from PNG that we normally render. We need to change it to OpenEXR, because that way you can render actually a 32-bit channel, and that's quite important for your depth information. I'll show you why. But before, you need to uncheck this, because this will put all of your multipasses into one file, and we don't want that. We want separate renders. So uncheck it, and then we can look at the depth pass. So here we are. I click on the depth pass, and as you can see, it's much more clean now. It has a lot of steps in between, and this is actually workable.